There is a book in the Bible that tells the most tragic and at the same time most hopeful story ever recorded. A book that begins with the indescribable glory of Solomon's temple and ends with that same temple completely destroyed, in flames, reduced to ashes. But in the last lines, something impossible happens, a turn of events so unexpected that it changed the fate of an entire nation. Welcome to CHRONICLES, the book of lost glory and impossible hope. Over the next 30 minutes, you'll discover why God filled Solomon's temple with such intense glory that the priests couldn't stand. You will understand why 19 kings passed through the throne of Judah and only 8 were faithful. And you'll see how a 70-word decree in the last lines of the book became the greatest demonstration that God never gives up on his people. Get ready. This is the most intense spiritual roller coaster in the Old Testament. 2 Chronicles begins where 1 Chronicles ended. Solomon has just taken the throne, David died, and now the time has come to build what David had only prepared, the temple. Chapters 2 to 7 of 2 Chronicles are completely devoted to the construction and dedication of the temple. And it's not just a construction, it is the construction, the most glorious, the most expensive, the most detailed ever recorded in the Bible. Solomon hires 153,600 workers. He imports cedars from Lebanon, gold from Ophir, bronze, silver, precious stones. The interior of the temple is completely covered in pure gold. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, everything shines, giant cherubim of gold. The veil is embroidered with gold, purple, and crimson threads. And then, on the day of dedication, something happens that has never been repeated in history. Chapter 5, verses 13 and 14. The Levites are singing. The priests are playing instruments. The people are loving it. And suddenly, the glory of God descends. A cloud so dense, so heavy, so glorious that it completely fills the temple. And the text says something shocking. The priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud, because the glory of the Lord filled the temple of God. Stop and think about it. God's presence was so intense that trained, consecrated, prepared spiritual leaders simply fell to the ground. They couldn't stand. Imagine the scene. The most glorious temple in the world, the most awaited moment in Israel's history. And God's presence is so overwhelming that no one can do anything at all but fall prostrate. And then Solomon prays. Chapter 6, one of the most beautiful and longest prayers in the Bible. He recognizes the greatness of God. He asks for mercy for the people. He intercedes for foreigners who will come to seek God in that place. And when he finishes, something else impossible happens. Fire descends from heaven and consumes the sacrifice. The glory of God fills the temple again, and all the people fall down and worship. This is the peak, the highest moment in Israel's history. The presence of God visible, tangible, undeniable. The temple is complete. The kingdom is united. Peace reigns. Solomon is the wisest and richest man in the world. Queens travel from distant lands just to see him. It seems that nothing can go wrong, but then something goes wrong. Very wrong. Chapter 9, verse 29, Solomon dies, and the kingdom immediately splits. The 10 northern tribes separate under Jeroboam. There are only 2 tribes left with Rehoboam, son of Solomon, Judah and Benjamin. And then begins the most painful part of 2 Chronicles, the long, slow, agonizing fall of Judah. Here's the pattern you'll see repeated 19 times throughout the book. A king takes over. The chronicler describes whether he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord or what was evil. If he has done good, the kingdom prospers. If he has done evil, the kingdom suffers. Invasions, plagues, defeats, death. It is a relentless cycle of faithfulness and apostasy, blessing and cursing, revival and decay. And here's something fascinating. The chronicler isn't interested in the northern kingdom. 2 Chronicles completely ignores Israel, the 10 tribes. He focuses exclusively on Judah. Why? Because Judah has the temple. Judah has the lineage of David. Judah has the promise. For the chronicler, only Judah matters, because only Judah keeps the messianic hope alive. Let's speed through the gallery of kings. Rehoboam, bad king, kingdom invaded by Egypt. Abijah, a bad king, but God gives him a victory because of David. Asa, good king, makes reform, destroys idols, seeks God, has peace for decades. But at the end of his life, he trusts doctors instead of God and dies. Jehoshaphat, a good king, he seeks to teach the law to the people, but makes an alliance with wicked kings and almost destroys everything. Jehoram, bad king, kills his own brothers, marries Athaliah, daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, brings Baal worship to Judah. He dies of a horrible disease. Ahaziah, bad king, killed by Jehu. In Thalia, she is not even a king. She is a usurping queen who tries to kill all of David's offspring. It almost succeeds in ending the messianic lineage. But a baby, Joash, is hidden in the temple for 6 years. Joash starts well, restores the temple, seeks God while the priest Jehoiada is alive. But when Jehoiada dies, Joash abandons God, kills Jehoiada's son, and ends up being murdered by his own servants. Amaziah starts well, ends badly. Uzziah, great king for decades, but he is proud, enters the temple to burn incense, is stricken with leprosy, and dies alone. Jotham, good king. Ahaz, a bad king, he closes the temple, offers his own son as a sacrifice, makes an alliance with Assyria. And then comes Hezekiah, chapters 29 to 32. Hezekiah is a ray of hope in the darkness. He takes the throne when all is lost. The temple is closed, dirty, abandoned. The people are in complete apostasy. Assyria has just destroyed the northern kingdom. Israel no longer exists. Judah is surrounded, and Hezekiah does something radical. He opens the doors of the temple. He summons the Levites. He cleanses the sanctuary. He restores sacrifice. And then he does something that hadn't been done in decades. He celebrates Easter, not only Judah, but he sends invitations to the survivors in the north. Go back to the Lord, he says. And something miraculous happens. The people respond. They cry. They regret it. They celebrate for 2 weeks instead of 1 because they don't want it to end. And when Assyria, the largest empire in the world, surrounds Jerusalem with 185,000 soldiers, Hezekiah prays. And one night, an angel of the Lord kills the entire Assyrian army. Judah is saved. The revival continues. But then Hezekiah dies, and his son Manasseh takes over. Manasseh, chapter 33, the worst king in the history of Judah. He reigns 55 years, more than half a century doing evil. He rebuilds the pagan altars that his father destroyed. He places idols inside the temple. He practices sorcery, consults mediums, sacrifices his own children in the fire. The text says that he caused Judah to sin more than the nations that God expelled from Canaan. Can you feel the weight of it? The temple, that place where the glory of God descended, where fire fell from heaven, where priests couldn't stand, now has idols inside it. Statues of pagan gods in the most holy place. It is the ultimate desecration. It is the ultimate disrespect. And God can no longer tolerate it. But then something surprising happens. Assyria captures Manasseh. They bind him with hooks, chain him, and take him to Babylon. And there, at the bottom of the well, at the height of humiliation, Manasseh repents. He cries out to God, and God forgives him. God brings him back to Jerusalem. Manasseh takes the idols out of the temple. He tries to undo the evil he has done, but it's too late. The damage is done. Ammon, son of Manasseh, evil king, murdered by his servants after only 2 years. And then comes Josiah, chapters 34 and 35. The last great revival of Judah. Josiah takes over at the age of 8. At the age of 16, he begins to seek God. At the age of 20, he begins the greatest religious reform in history. He destroys altars, breaks idols, burns the bones of the pagan priests upon their own altars. He cleanses the earth. And then, while they're renovating the temple, high priest Hilkiah finds something, the book of the law. The Torah had been lost, hidden, forgotten. They read it to Josiah, and Josiah rends his garments. He realizes how far Judah has strayed from God. He calls the people together, reads the law publicly, and all make a covenant to obey God. Josiah celebrates the greatest Passover since the days of Samuel. But then, inexplicably, Josiah dies young in an unnecessary battle against Egypt, and with his death, Judah's last hope dies. The last 4 kings are all evil. Jehoahaz reigns 3 months, deported to Egypt. Jehoiakim, puppet king of Egypt, evil king. Jehoiakim reigns 3 months, deported to Babylon. And finally, Zedekiah. Zedekiah, chapter 36. The last king of Judah. He reigns 11 years and does evil continually. He despises the prophets. It hardens your heart. And the text says something devastating. The Lord, the God of his fathers, sent messengers insistently because he had compassion on his people and on the place of his dwelling. But they mocked God's messengers, despised their words, and ridiculed their prophets. And then, in verse 17, the sentence falls. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, invades Jerusalem. He kills the young in the very house of the sanctuary. He spares neither young nor virgin, neither old nor gray. He burns the temple of God. That glorious temple overlaid with gold, where the presence of God descended like cloud and like fire, burnt, destroyed, ransacked. They break down the walls of Jerusalem. They take all the utensils of the temple to Babylon. They deport the people. The land is desolate for 70 years to fulfill the word of the Lord through Jeremiah. It's the end, the worst possible scenario. The promise seems to have failed. David's lineage is in captivity. The temple is destroyed. Jerusalem is a heap of ruins. And 2 Chronicles should end there, with tragedy, with defeat, with the proof that when a people abandons God, the consequences are inevitable and devastating. But it doesn't end there. Verses 22 and 23, the last lines of the book. 70 years have passed. A new empire emerged, Persia, and a Persian king named Cyrus does something impossible. He decrees, "This is what Cyrus, king of Persia, says. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has charged me to build him a temple in Jerusalem of Judah. Whoever among you is of his people, let the Lord his God be with him, and go up." Stop. Breathe. Do you understand what just happened? A pagan king, a worshipper of other gods, has just recognized the God of Israel as the God of heaven. He is sending the people back. He is commanding the rebuilding of the temple. He's funding everything. After 70 years of exile, of destruction, of seeming abandonment, God is bringing his people back. And here's the most amazing detail. 2 Chronicles ends in the middle of a sentence. Let it go up. It's an open ending. It is an invitation. It is a door that is left ajar, waiting for someone to enter. The chronicler is saying, the story is not over. The people returned. The temple will be rebuilt. The promise lives on. God did not give up. Then why does 2 Chronicles exist? Why retell this painful story of rise and fall, glory and shame, faithfulness and apostasy? Because 2 Chronicles is a mirror. It is a warning. It is a message to every generation that thinks it can play with God, that it can mix true worship with idolatry, that it can ignore prophets and still expect blessings. 2 Chronicles shows that God is patient, but not infinitely. He sent prophets. He gave chances. He waited. But when the people hardened their hearts completely, judgment came. But 2 Chronicles also shows that God is faithful, even when we are unfaithful. Even when the temple is in ruins, even when the people are exiled, even when all seems lost, God remembers his covenant. And here's the connection we can't miss. When you read the New Testament, especially the Gospels, you realize that Jesus is presented as the true temple. John 2:19 says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." He was talking about his body. Solomon's physical temple was destroyed. The second temple, built after the exile, would also be destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. But Jesus is the eternal temple where the glory of God dwells permanently. 2 Chronicles teaches us that structures can fall, empires can crumble, even temples can be burned. But God's promise remains. David's line continues, and it culminates in Jesus Christ, the Son of David, the true King, whose kingdom will never end. That decree of Cyrus at the end of 2 Chronicles is only a foreshadowing. The true return from exile happens when Jesus brings his people back from the bondage of sin to the freedom of grace. So when you feel in spiritual exile, when your life seems like ruins, when you think you're too far away to go back, remember, God is the God who rebuilds temples. He is the God who brings back exiles. He is the God who does not give up. And he's saying to you today, just as he said through Cyrus 25 centuries ago, "Come up, back, rebuild, because I am with you." 2 Chronicles, the book of lost glory and impossible hope. The book that shows us that no matter how deep we fall, God can still lift us up. No matter how devastated the temple of our lives is, God can still rebuild it. Because he is faithful. It always has been. It always will be.